Please find your seat. Settle into your posture and your breathing. And see if you can do so immediately, without thinking about it, without planning, preparing, or rehearsing anything. Just simply sit with the immediate and direct sensations of your body sitting, of the body breathing. And let's begin with eyes open. You might make your gaze very wide and relaxed so that you take in your whole visual field at once. See if you can find the edges of your eyes from the inside. See how big your eyes are when looking from the inside out. And then simply receive rather than grab whatever there is to be seen. Stay with this for a while and notice the natural tendency of your vision to oscillate between this wide, relaxed, receptive gaze and the more narrow, reaching and grabbing vision, such as when you focus on an object. See if you can follow this movement of your vision as you would follow your breath. And then when you find yourself locked in on an object, gently let go and return to the wide and relaxed, receptive gaze. Notice that this shifting happens even when you don't move your eyes. And notice that you don't have to make it happen. In fact, you don't do most of the driving anyway. Simply rest your attention on your breath and attend to this movement of vision for a moment. In today's practice, we're going to start looking at the other space of vision, that space in which mental imagery occurs. Of course, you may already suspect that qualifying this space of vision as other to the one we've been working with so far is probably not all that accurate, but we'll stick with it for a moment. And we're not going to do anything special about it today. We are simply going to get acquainted. And we're going to do so by doing something that may sound rather very weird. We're going to attend to our seeing with our eyes closed. Continue attending to the movements of your visual field as you have done up to this point. And when you are ready, just close your eyes. and see what you see. Now, firstly, appreciate that your visual field or your space of vision is still there. It is exactly the same space as when your eyes were open, except now the contents have changed quite significantly. Where there once was a room or park or bus or whatever the context of your sitting was, now there is a lot of black and gray shadows and weird little moving lights and some odd red hued shapes moving around. In other words, now your space of vision is filled with the back of your eyelids. This is what the back of your eyelids look like. But notice that there is not a moment of interruption in the space of seeing. Notice that there is other stuff being seen, too. Various visions, mental images, things seen in your mind's eye are there. To help make this more salient, bring to your mind's eye a mental image of a lit candle. Of course, it doesn't need to be anything as mystical as a lit candle. You can just imagine an apple or your car keys. It doesn't really matter. Just bring the image to your mind's eye. For those among you who are highly visually inclined, this might be a very crisp, clear, vivid image. It might look alive. For those amongst us who are not so visually inclined, this is likely to be a bit more messy. It might not be even a one complete candle in there. It could be multiple candles, bits of candle, things that represent candle. It will change and shift and morph and may be very hazy and unstable. For our purposes, it doesn't really matter which it is. And it doesn't even matter how accurate the arising images are. What matters is that there is something there to be seen and that it is being seen. Notice this clearly and appreciate that this seeing is essentially the same as the seeing that goes on with your eyes open. It's just a bit hazier, sort of like seeing through fog or seeing images projected on fog. But it is being seen. It is visual. Of course, the image of a candle or your apple or your car keys will have moved on by now, quite a few times probably, and there'll be all sorts of other stuff going on in there. There'll be other candles, things related to candles, people related to ideas about candles, unrelated people, maybe some unrelated food, memories of celebrations or funerals. All sorts of stuff will be going on in there, but it will be there. Notice it. This too is seeing. Now, there are several important things to notice about this space of seeing. For today, just pay attention to the very obvious fact that this space is constantly full. This internal vision is constantly on. In much the same way as if you are awake and conscious and you have eyes that work, as long as your eyes are open or even closed, your visual field is full of whatever there is to be seen. Even if that happens to be the pitch black of a dark room or the back of your eyelids. In exactly the same way, as long as the lights are on, as in you are awake and aware, this space of internal seeing is constantly full of something. What that something is, what the content of this space of internal seeing happens to be, is not relevant for our purposes today. That is not to say that it is not important. It is actually so important that we may look to return to it later on. But to put it simply, if your memories, conditioning, unresolved dissonances and traumas from early life or childhood are going to influence your life and decision making today, they can only do so to the extent that they affect your perception of life and living right now. And they do so by showing up somewhere in your momentary experience. And that somewhere, very often, is mental imagery. And you can think of this almost literally as a visual filter through which you see everything else. Except we tend to be entirely ignorant of it, which doesn't take away its power over us. And notice also that just like with your visual field of the world outside, you have no choice but to see the things that you see. You cannot stop yourself from seeing the next thing you see in your mind's eye. And by and large, you don't choose what those things are. So let's spend some time with this space, just a couple of minutes today, to get familiar. You might resettle your posture if needed. Rest your attention on your breathing. And with your eyes closed, simply attend to your space of seeing. Your mind will wander. There will be hearing, there will be thinking, there will be feeling, and the preferences of your attention will shift across these. Let it. But every time you find your attention preoccupied with mental imagery, note it and label it. Seeing. Some people find it helpful to do this to a particular cadence or timing so as not to be noting and labeling all of the time. And your breathing tends to be a good metronome for this. So, for example, you might use the end of each exhale as a reminder to check in with your attention. And wherever it happens to be, if it is thinking, leave it be. If it is hearing, leave that be. If it is feeling, leave that be too. But if it happens to be occupied with mental imagery, note it and label it. Seeing. Do this for a few minutes. See what you see. You might find that there are too many seeings for you to note and label them all, and you might find a bit of frustration here. A big part of the practice is learning to let go of most of the things that flow through our sensory fields. Just like when you walk down a busy street, you don't pay close attention to everything. If you would, you'd probably fry your brain a little bit. Most of it you let go. In exactly the same way, learning to let go of most of what happens inside our minds is not a bad idea. And so, when you notice that your mind is preoccupied with visual imagery, simply note it, label it, see, stick with it for as long as it is there, and let go. Now, this may have felt like a fair bit of work. That's okay. It takes some practice. And it helps to remember that this space of vision does everything by itself. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to bring these images to mind. You don't need to make them go away. They do that by themselves. And most of the practice is learning to see this clearly. So for the last minute, simply stop. Keep sitting as you're sitting, breathing as you're breathing, eyes closed, and simply let things be. That's enough for now. When you're ready, open your eyes, move around a little bit, and go about your day.